Hey guys, welcome back to the Homestead Dinners channel. Here's another 1 week meal prep video. The first thing I'm going to make is a pizza dough that I'm going to use for the week. This is 4 cups of flour. I'm using all-purpose flour. 1 cup and a half of warm water. And then it calls for 2 teaspoons of active dry yeast, and I just put maybe like a teaspoon or so of honey and set that aside until it bubbles up. Next, I'm putting in a tablespoon of Himalayan pink salt. Then I put 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Then I go ahead and I pour my water active dry yeast mixture into the flour, and I just use something to stir it just for the beginning of it, just to incorporate it all. And then after I mix it a little bit, I just go ahead and use my hand and mix a little bit more. And I just fold all the flour into itself and knead it until it is a good dough texture. And then I go ahead and cover it and set that aside while I cook my other meals. Next up is the salmon. If you saw my last video of my food prep, I did the same type of salmon. Some garlic powder that I spread around it. I don't really measure, I just kind of eyeball it. And then I put some parsley on both of the salmon. I just cut the salmon in half. It was a big slab of salmon, so I just cut that in half and put some parsley, and then drizzle some honey all around. Just give it a good coat. Then I sprinkle some salt a little bit, and then I go ahead and squeeze a lemon that I've cut in half, and I just put some lemon juice on both. And then I'll cut the lemon into slices and spread the lemon slices on the salmon. And when I cook it for 400 degrees, and I just put a little bit of butter between the lemon slices, making some sweet potatoes to go with that salmon. Just peel them up. Then I cut the sweet potato and I just chop it up into small little bits of sweet potato. Go ahead and put the sweet potato pieces in an aluminum foil, and I drizzle some olive oil around it. And then I sprinkle some garlic powder, a good coat. Then I just sprinkle some pepper. And then I sprinkle a little bit of oregano. And then some basil. I give it a good mix. And I go ahead and I put that in a container where I'll be cooking that the next day. Next meal is a lasagna, and so I am peeling and cutting an onion, 1 whole onion, for the sauce. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just prepping the onion to be chopped in little pieces. Now the next meal is a lasagna. So I go ahead and salt some water and boil a good amount of these lasagna noodles as my first step. I go ahead and I cook the onion until they're translucent a little bit. And then I go ahead and I add my ground beef. Now I go ahead and I cook the meat fully and I drain the excess oil out of the pan. Now after I drain the oil out of the pan, I do add tomato sauce. I add spices like oregano, onion powder, garlic powder, minced garlic. Now to prep the lasagna, I shredded mozzarella cheese. I put some tomato sauce on the pan on the bottom. And then I go ahead and I place about 4 lasagna noodles. I don't know how you say the correct name, but those types of noodles as the first layer. So my next meal I'm making is a stuffed spinach and cheese type of noodle. And I go ahead first and prep my onion. I use 1 whole onion for this recipe, and I go ahead and I chop it into little pieces. The next thing I do is I get 1 whole can of ricotta cheese with an egg and I beat it together and incorporate the two. Then I put a good 2 to 3 handfuls of spinach. You can also cut the spinach ahead of time into little pieces. I should have done that. I felt like the whole spinach was okay, but maybe next time I'll go ahead and cut it first and chop it up. So I go ahead and mix that together. And I'm adding some garlic powder. Then I add some pepper. And then I add a little bit of rosemary. And then I'm adding some oregano. I go ahead and I prep my noodles and I boil them. Now after I boil my noodles, I go ahead and make the sauce. So same thing as a lasagna sauce. I chop some onion, a whole onion, and I cook that until they're translucent, and then I put a big can of tomato sauce to let that cook with the onion for a little bit. And then I'm adding some Italian spice, which is a mixture of oregano, sage, basil, and I put some garlic powder, maybe like a good tablespoon or 2. I put some salt as well, and I stir that up and I let that simmer for a couple minutes. Now to do this, I went ahead and first put the spinach ricotta cheese mixture into a plastic bag, and I go ahead and I layer it with tomato sauce first, and then I get the noodle and I try to put the mixture in that way, and it wasn't working out, so it was a little bit messier this way, but I went ahead and I just got a spoon and stuffed the noodle with the mixture, as you see here. It wasn't too bad, it was a little bit messy. I put some of the mixture in one end and I put some of the mixture in the other end of the noodle to stuff it as much as I could. I had a lot of broken noodles, so I just got one noodle that was broken and I put the rest of the mixture in there and I enclosed it and finished off the meal that way. And after I'm done stuffing the noodles, I put the rest of the tomato sauce on top. And then I spreaded some mozzarella cheese, which I shredded earlier, on top of that. Now these next two meals are freezer bag meals. One's a pork chop meal and one's a chicken meal. I didn't show you what I did when I put in the chicken, but I did cut up a whole thing of onion. I chopped that up. I chopped some celery up and some carrots. And I put some Italian seasoning and garlic, minced garlic, into the chicken bag. For the pork chops, I put a whole chopped onion into the bag of pork chops. This is pretty much what I did, what I didn't show you when I put the chicken in, but you saw all the ingredients. In this pork chop one though, I put some minced garlic in there. I put some rosemary, spices, and then I put some Italian seasoning as well that has a mixture of basil, sage, and oregano. Then I put some garlic powder. And then I put some more basil. I went ahead and added some salt and closed up the bag. I went ahead just incorporate it all together. Now after I finished those two freezer meals, I went ahead and I went back to my pizza dough. So the first thing I did was I added some flour on the countertop. And I took my dough out of my pot that I had it in, and I go ahead and I fold it into itself, as you see here. And then I flip it around and do it again. I rolled it into itself. And I do this type of motion here where I kind of just circle it in, and with my hand I just, as you see that motion I'm doing to make it into a nice round size. So I'm going to cut this dough into 4 pieces first. You can use a knife to do this, but this tool here is perfect for cutting dough. And each piece of dough I round it, as you see. By doing this motion, I pinch it in the bottom and I use my hand to circle around the dough. And then I get these glass containers, I put some olive oil in them, and I place each dough inside. This will stay in the refrigerator and expand within the week. And for a leftover dough that I have, I just get some plastic wrap and I wrap that and put it into the refrigerator. Next is to make the tomato sauce for the pizza. I put some tomato sauce into a glass jar, and then I add some garlic powder. All you need is about half of tomato sauce in a jar for the 2 pizzas. So after the garlic powder, I add some basil, and then I add some onion powder. I'm using it about maybe a teaspoon each. And then I add a little bit of maple syrup. You can add a pinch of salt as well. And there we go. And just lay it out. Pizza sauce and mozzarella. So I have 2 pizzas I'm gonna make. And then this dough, I'm gonna make knots, garlic knots, to go with the lasagna. I have my chili I made beforehand. I'm gonna freeze. This is just extra dough I can have. I have this chicken stock I made beforehand, so I'm just gonna put it pretty much almost the whole thing in here when I cook the chicken soup with some noodles. Put it in for high pressure for about 25 to 30 minutes. And then we have pork chops that I'm going to serve with some rice and salad on the side. We have our sweet potato we're going to put in the oven for 400 for about 25 minutes or until nice, crispy, and soft. We have the salmon we're gonna cook for 400 for about 30 to 40 minutes. We have our stuffed, I forgot what this noodle is called, stuffed with cheese, spinach, and ricotta with tomato sauce and cheese. We have our lasagna. We have our pizza dough that we're gonna just put together real quick. Now I want to show you during the week how I use that pizza dough. So see how it expanded into the bowls in the refrigerator. I went ahead and I put some flour on my counter and I spread out the dough with my hand. I'm doing this one-handed, but obviously you can do it with 2 hands and just spread it in a circle as much as you can with your fingers. And then you can use a rolling pin like I am and roll the dough out into a circle. Now after you roll your dough into a circle, I put it on a pan and my tomato sauce that I made earlier, and I spread that up first with also some olive oil around as well. So here I put a tomato paste I was starting. I forgot my oil, so I went ahead and did that after, and I spread the olive oil a little bit around, not too much. And then after I spread the olive oil, I go ahead and I add my tomato sauce on my pizza dough. Now after you add your tomato sauce, you add the cheese of choice. Here I put some mozzarella cheese I spread around, and I bake it for 500 degrees for about 6 to 7 minutes, and it comes out beautifully. You guys got some inspiration and some recipes to use for yourself, and there you go, all done. I'm going to freeze everything except for this salmon, which I'm going to have tomorrow because tomorrow's Monday, and the pizza dough because it doesn't need to be frozen. Everything else is going to be frozen, and of course not this because this is going to be eaten tomorrow. And there we go, it's going to be all good to go for the week. Thank you for watching, guys. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Please like and comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts about this week's worth of dinner, and I'll see you in the next one.